Yes, my people. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Talk the Ting. Tonight we're gonna have a little continuation of the discussion we had a couple weeks ago. We feel like there was a lot of information that we didn't touch on, so we want to make sure that we don't leave you guys stranded with information that we could share.
And good evening.
Welcome to whether it be our experiences or whether it be questions you guys might have based on the conversations that we had. So we wanted to come back again and have an episode where we could continue the conversation about the transition to America. As you guys could see, we have Carol and Brad back as they were here the last time. Sorry about that. My phone just...
I'm back too, guys. I'm back too. Good night, everybody.
You wasn't back when you... Or you back when you wasn't there last time? You can't be back.
Well, I'm back from not being back the last time, you check?
Yeah, man. So, yeah, guys. So, yeah, we have Rajiv there. Rajiv will also be giving his perspective. Obviously, Rajiv is one of the hosts of the show. But we'll be going into, some detail and stuff and just trying to share as much information as we can on, what could help with your transition to the United States, whether you have made that transition or you're going to plan to make that transition in the future, or somebody who is currently in the transition, something that could help them out. So with that said, before we go into the details there, let's talk a little bit about recent events we've had in football, because we all football fans. Already going to that now. We all football fans.
I decided to be on my best behavior, and leave that alone. But okay, go ahead.
Well, it's okay, my partner. I see Chelsea, make the Champions League final there. It's all right. But don't worry, City will take care of all you, man.
Congratulations, but
Well, that's what they say about Madrid was supposed to take care of us, and the team before that was supposed to take care of us, and the team before that. So
Yeah, man. So, guys, before we continue, a couple of housekeeping items. Again, as normal, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you guys could put that in the chat. You guys can reach out to us on Instagram, on our personal Instagram pages, on the Talk the Ting Instagram page, on Facebook. We have the videos. Every episode is uploaded to YouTube, if not the same night, but the day after. If you guys want to go back and watch and learn and observe, you guys can do that as well. Also, for the merchandise, we have a Mother's Day special going on, 20% discount. And that code is Mothers Rock, Mothers ROC, no K, Mothers ROC, and we will be putting that in the chat as well. Okay, so Mothers Rock.
Get your mug,
and
get your hoodies. Yeah, real. Show them the t-shirt.
Yeah, I must say the quality is quite nice. They're very comfortable. Fits well. Yes.
Discount code, 20% discount code. Hey, Gabby Fran, check it now. They're giving discount code. Well, we got to do something special for
just
the
buy
mothers,
some more.
An opportunity to buy some more, man.
Yeah, man, buy some more, buy something different.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of different things on the page. We have these mugs. I know the thing kind of making it blurry there, but hot and cold cup. I've gotten a lot of very good feedback on the stuff. So check it out. Try to support the show as best you guys can, and we'll make sure that we could try to keep some good stuff coming for you guys. So with that said, Rajiv, what do you guys? What's your synopsis on the last discussion we had in terms of your transition to America? Start us off, and then we can go from there.
Pressure. All right. So I came to America specifically for school. I came here in I don't remember the year, but I came specifically for school. As far as the transferring of the credits were concerned, that was it was a good point to touch on, because I didn't have that pat down when I came, so I started all over. What else? I met Carol at school, and through Carol, I got to know a lot of the ropes. So that's why you say networking was very important. So Carol was able to show me where to get things done, how to get them done. Simple things like maybe printing, like knowing who to speak to about international students related things, because at the time I was an international student. So knowing who to speak to about choosing courses, making sure that I'm full time, all of that stuff. That's not very clear to you before you come up. We'll talk. I have a little bit more to talk about in terms of internships per se, but I guess as we go along, we'll get more into that.
Internships. That's an interesting point there. That's an important aspect into what we want to talk about tonight in terms of people and the transition, not just coming to America, but after you're done with school, you know, how do you go into the corporate world, or if you're doing if you have a trade or something like that, how do you address that? So that's an interesting topic as well that we want to get into tonight. But we also don't want to forget the people who didn't come here for school, right? We have a lot of people who came here, you know, at older ages. Not to call you guys old, right? You know, just saying that you didn't come at 19, 20, you maybe came in your 30s and your 40s. And at that point, you're not necessarily looking to go back to school, you're more looking at work. So, you know, that's an important thing as well. Carol, what are you saying about, I mean, continue on the discussion we had last week. What you have to say for me tonight? Talk to me.
I think one thing we didn't really touch on was the importance of professional organizations while you're in school, you know, and that in itself is an essential part to what Rajiv mentioned, networking. So within those professional organizations while you're in school, like you get, you know, exposure to companies who you might want to work for, to people who you might need to know in case you want to apply for a job. You get consultation on your resume, and your resume is a very important part of being here, especially if you're trying to get into the corporate world. Like if you're a skilled worker, then it's, you know, it might be a little different, that I cannot really speak on. But it helps you transition into the professional world, because essentially college is just preparing you for professional life, you know. And then part of it is that, you know, you meet people from places you want to work who have literally been where you are right now, like as a student, and who will give you advice, who will help you kind of just prepare for life after school. And then, as Rajesh said, they open up avenues for work while you're still in school, and then work after school, you know, because if you do get an internship and you do represent yourself well, then, you know, it can lead to opportunities for full-time employment. And companies always want to see experience of some sort, right? So if you're coming from Dominica, you have some experience, it's important to include that kind of experience on your resume and so forth. You know, so it's just, I think part of what we wanted to touch on was just transitioning after school. So I don't know if you want to continue to build on that or talk about your, Brad, I know you had you know, internships after. So if you want to continue,
Yeah,
talk about
I
your
just want
experience.
to add a little bit on the note about professional memberships. So most of them will have if you're in school, they will have a school chapter. And then if you're not, if you're a professional looking for a job, they usually have their main professional chapter. And what's good about them is that they give you a lot of exposure to people in the industry. You know, they have conferences, and at those conferences, they'll have interviews, they'll invite people to apply for jobs. So it's a very good thing to get involved with, especially some of the ones where, for example, like there's one called NABA, National Association of Black Accountants. For somebody like me specifically, it's people, you know, like myself, you know, Black people who have been in your shoes, and they can give it's a good opportunity to get exposure to people who have been there and who are in the industry doing what you may want to do. So it's and it's not just to join and just be a member. You want to, if possible, participate in events and make an effort to attend conferences and stuff, so you can get exposure to people at those things, and it helps. A lot of people I know got jobs or internships through these professional associations and their school chapters.
Right, and to piggyback off that, not only participating, but if you can, in any kind of capacity, take on a leadership role, because that's always important to show that you can step up and you can basically function in a leadership role. So that's always essential, and then it really helps boost your prospects once you graduate and move on. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, I think your first degree, right? Your undergrad degree, I think most times serves as, you know, a means to get you into a job, right? It kind of opens the door for you, get you interviews, but then you still have to be able to perform when you go do an interview, right? Some of the things that I did when I was finishing up my undergrad was going to the different programs where they have the mock interviews, where you learn how to put together a resume. You know, you sit with a couple different coaches and stuff. You do panel interview, do different type of interviews, because certain jobs you have to interview for panels, certain jobs you interview with one or two people. So they do all of these things. So when you actually come to having to do it, you know, you're more versed in it and you're more comfortable. And one point I want to say is what Carol just spoke about was the leadership aspect of it, because in my experience, that really helped me a lot, right? Because I was leading a group that I did for a class, and that kind of helped me in the job that I am now, right? To kind of sell yourself in the interview, because all these questions are going to come up, right? How do you perform as a leader and all of these different things. So, you know, I think that's definitely an important point. I know they also have things like career centers, right? Where you actually go there and you speak with different, the people come from different companies, you know, Fortune 500 companies, pharmaceutical companies, especially, well, I know in New Jersey, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies recruit from the schools, you know, in and around the area, you know, CUNY, Rutgers, you know, what school Rajiv went to? I don't know. I don't know what school Rajiv
City
went
College.
to. City College, you know, all those schools. And we spoke about last couple of weeks about not being caught in the illusion of going to an expensive school just because of the name, right? That's an important point as well. Rajiv, what's your experience considering that you came as an international student, and I know that you kind of transitioned from that, you know, when you became a permanent resident. So how was that transition? If there anything that you could say that could help anybody in that scenario?
Well, unluckily for me, by the time, you know, I was not an international student. I was pretty much done with school already. So I wasn't able to take advantage of most of the benefits. So I didn't really get a feel of how things were where that is concerned. But in terms of being there as an international student and things I think that people need to note is, I think timing is very important, like throughout your time as an undergrad, especially like as an international student. So waiting until your senior year to start going to career fairs or to start joining a professional organization is too late. Like from the time you, let's say you are not on, given that you're not undecided when you start off your first year, from that time you should be keeping an eye open for the professional organizations, for applicable, you know, engagements regarding your major, and don't spend too much time in stuff like Caribbean Students Association and those kinds of stuff. Because yes, those things are very important culturally. But at the end of the day, you also need a job at the end when you graduate. So the word internships can be very scary for some people, but an internship doesn't have to be something big and fancy or across the country or whatnot. By your second year of college, you can find a professor, whether you're in sciences or in the arts or in something business, accounting. Find somebody who's working. If if you're not qualifying for any of those, internships that you have to formally apply for, look out for professors that are working on stuff right now. Sometimes they need help.
Mhm.
Sometimes they just need somebody to, to do some of the work. That is real. That can be considered real hands-on like work experience. And you'll be surprised how many doors that can open for you and how much you can really learn apart from what you just pick up in class. So
Right.
my advice would be to start early, start getting engaged very, very early on.
And then you have to create those kind of professional relationships with people, because while you're in school, you may have a professor, you're doing well in the class, but then you don't talk to the professor, right? You basically just going through the system, and the professor might be looking at you as somebody who can help them, in something that they're doing. So as well as internships, specific projects will also help boost your prospects. If you're doing a project specific to just one thing that you're doing in class, right? But then the professor needs help with that paper or that thing, that can also help you, because then your name will be on the work done, and then that kind of thing. And those are the kind of things that employers look for.
Yeah.
Well, so.
I just want to add to that. So in terms of internships, I know that we have financial commitments, but depending on your financial situation, you may also want to consider there are a lot of internships that may not necessarily pay you a salary, but they may have like a daily stipend. But you may want to consider those as well, because in terms of looking for a job, those little internships on your resume make a world of difference. Especially if you only have really been to school and you haven't really held a professional job down. If you could get one of those internships, I mean, it may be unpaid, it may have a stipend, but if possible and your situation permits, you want to consider those as well too, because it's invaluable on a resume. They look for those things to see what you've been doing with your time, and if you just go into school, it kind of lends itself poorly towards your time management and stuff like that.
So we kind of going back into what we had the last time, but let's transition a little bit into actually working, right? And let's say for somebody who comes up here at 30 years old, 35 years old, they already was working in Dominica, let's say for 10, 15 years. One of the major differences that I've seen is Social Security, right? And credit, and some of those things that we don't necessarily think about in Dominica. Like we had this Social Security episode a couple of weeks ago, and I think the man we had on, he said that you have to wait until you work, right, to get a Social Security card. But in America, from the day you're born, you get a Social Security number, right? Now, credit is one thing that's very important in America. And from my experience, a lot of people don't know that, right? So you come and you think, oh, I need a phone, so let me just go buy a phone, like you would do in Dominica. It doesn't work that way. So then you have to end up being on somebody's plan and do all of these things. So I know Brad is the finance guy. I know you're not a finance guy, accounting guy, but still, you're the money man. So give us a little rundown on how, people should get started in terms of credit, establishing credit.
Well, as you say, it's one of the most important things you have to consider when moving to and living in this country. I mean, it's basically what runs the country. Credit. You could basically have a lot of money in the bank, but if your credit score, your credit worthiness is poor, I mean, lenders wouldn't want to extend any business to you. You know what I mean? So, but I think initially the important thing to start with is to try to build some credit. So some of the helpful things that you can do is you can open like a secured credit card with a very small limit just to get your credit started. But it's very, very important to remember that you shouldn't. It's. what I essentially trying to say is that it's very important that you don't fall on the wrong side of these things, and make sure that you're paying them back promptly and you don't maintain too much of a high balance in it, because like many things in life, it's very easy to get these things, but then it's easier to end up destroying your credit before you even build any.
Before you build it, yep.
So as I mentioned, you could get a secured card by you may have, like, for example, $500, and you just put that down and secure that and open a credit card, and that will get your credit started, and from there you can try to build it. But I just want to go back to one point. So not to harp on like people coming here for school and stuff, but sometimes, or even people who move here, you may want to go to school and you may have like tuition commitments that you need to pay for, and some people consider paying out of pocket and ending up in financial hardships and stuff. The government here has available federal loans that you can get while you're in school, and you don't have to start paying them back until you finish and get a job. So I just encourage people to consider those depending on their situation, because sometimes, you try to make ends meet while in school and paying everything out of pocket, and you end up in a deeper financial hole than you would be if you had, just take a loan and then you worry about it.
And the interest rates are favorable currently as well.
And the interest rates are favorable from those federal loans. And and they pay the interest for you, depending on your financial situation, they'll pay the interest for you while you're in school.
So that's a good point. But somebody asking a little bit more information on the secure credit card. So basically, the secure credit card, I mean, you have two types of credit cards, right? You have a secure, which is like Brad said, you have cash. You go to the bank and say, hey, I want a credit card. You give them the money, right? $500, $1,000, whatever it is, and they give you a credit card with that limit. Basically, they have money that covers whatever you spend, right? Whatever your limit is. After, let's say, I think it's pretty much like 6 months to a year after you have that secured credit card, and you're paying it back on time. And a key thing is to remember that to build your credit fast, as quickly as possible, you're not supposed to spend any more than 10% of that limit at any given time. You definitely don't want to be over 30%. So let's say you give them $1,000, in the back of your mind, all you have to spend is $300, and you make sure that you pay that off every time. You keep paying it off. You pay it off every month. After you have shown some kind of credit worthiness within 6 months to a year, maybe 18 months, the bank basically will be able to now have some confidence, and they will give you an unsecured credit card. And I don't know if in every situation, but at least in situation for me, that money that you gave them up front, they will give you back that money, right? So then the card basically becomes an unsecured card. And then throughout the years, as you build your credit, then, basically the more the more credit worthy you are, the more they will be willing to lend you. So you're just gonna be getting letters in the mail telling you, oh, your credit limit has been increased to 2,000. It's been increased to 5,000. And then the more money you make, obviously, because when you apply for these cards, you have to put all of that information, right? Your annual income, whether you're renting or you're buying, or you have a mortgage, all of those type of information, you put that in. And then basically the more you make, the more they're willing to let you borrow, right? But like Brad said, the country is built on credit. So you could have millions of dollars in the bank. If you do not have a good credit score, you haven't shown yourself to be credit worthy, you will not be able to get a lot of things. Because it's very difficult to even buy things with cash. It's almost impossible to walk into a car dealership and be like, hey, I have $30,000, let me just buy a car. Because they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. It doesn't really happen.
Just to tie it back into employment, there are a lot of situations, especially when you move past that entry level role and you're a professional. Job when you're being considered for a job, it may often include a credit check. So if you're looking for an apartment, you're looking to buy a house, all those things include credit checks. So it's very important that you maintain a good score. And in addition to what Dwayne mentioned about maintaining 10% or less balance in your card, you have to make sure that you are making payments on time every time, because late payments is one of the things that factor in the most into the calculation of your credit score, and it doesn't give lenders confidence that you are a credit-worthy customer that they could extend credit to.
Somebody asking, please clarify, would that apply to international students? To be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
Secure credit card?
The secure credit card applies to international students. We could find that out. I don't know if any of you guys know, but if we could find that out.
It depends on the bank. I mean, you would have to check your local bank to see. Some banks will extend to students, some won't. But just remember, guys, this is just financial guidance. We're not giving official financial advice. So
Right.
don't take
And
these as gospel. Consult with the bank that you do business with, if you're an international student or whatnot at this point in time, and see what the options are. And don't overcommit for sure. That's bottom line.
So from my experience, I had an unsecured credit card, but it was through the bank and a promotional thing that they had for college students. Right. So
available for international students.
Yes, I was an international student when I first got it. You have to provide all of the documents that they ask for, and then just prove that you are staying in the US legally. So your I-20 or your I-94, all those documents they probably need. And then it really depends on the bank. So I cannot speak for say Bank of America or anything, but I got mine through Wells Fargo. So it really varies, but you have to ask the question, because half the time if you have an account and you just there, they probably won't extend it to you.
Yeah, I know there's also loans that you could get as an international student if there's somebody in America, as a permanent resident or a citizen who is willing to co-sign for you as well. I mean, that's not very easy to get people to co-sign loans for you, but it's also an avenue that can be considered. And Gabi Fran is saying there, less than 30%. The trick with the credit card is to pay bills with it that you could use your savings to cover. Try your best not to put anything on the card that you don't have cover payments. And by the way, I'm reading this because I know who Gabi Fran is, and I know she knows what she's talking about.
I agree. That's actually like one of my rules of thumb. Like I use my credit card to pay for the things that I would have used my debit card to pay for anyway. So you basically you do not saying that you're not going to end up in an emergency situation, but your best should be to try to pay with your credit card what you were about to pay with for cash anyway. So you're not overextending, overcommitting yourself. Don't spend what you don't have. Even if your credit limit is 20 times your income, pretend that is just an imaginary number.
Another key thing to avoid is, the way the country works, you'll be extended credit a lot. If you go shopping in stores, they'll offer you like 20% off if you sign up for a credit card.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
While the average age of your credit history is a factor, you also want to avoid opening too many cards.
Yep.
Because that again also affects your score and your worthiness. But the average age of your score is a factor. So you may have opened a card as soon as you move here, and you may think, well, I don't really use that card anymore. But if you close those and all you have is a few recent ones, the age of your credit is kind of young. It kind of affects that too. So you want to keep that in mind.
It really, when you're talking about average age, you're really talking about like 10 years until you start seeing that particular aspect of your credit report changing. Because I was wondering the same thing, like 5 years, 6 years in, I'm like, what are people talking about? I have a credit card for 5 years, but that don't really mean nothing. Because remember, you're competing against people, in terms of people who have money, right? A lot of people put their kids as like beneficiaries on their credit card and stuff like that at 16, right? So authorized users, right? So you come in here at 25, you're already 10 years behind the 8 ball, right? This kid already is established. One thing I want to comment on is when you come to America, it's very easy to see what everybody else has and to compare yourself to them. And you have to try your best to stay in your lane. You have to try your best to not overexert yourself. Because if you work hard, I think good things will come to you. But you might come here and you might see people your age, but you have to also remember everybody's circumstances is different. So what might work for one person might not work for you. So you have to be willing to take advice. You have to be willing to listen. Feedback is something that people don't have to give you, right? They don't have to tell you anything. People can see you going to jump off a cliff and doesn't watch you jump off the cliff. So whether people tell you something is good or bad, you have to take that for what it is. You're not saying that everything somebody tell you, you have to listen, but at the same time, the people who have been there before you, they know, right? It's just like when we were younger, right? And our parents tell us we can't fool them, and we used to think like we could. And then we get older now and realize we really wasn't fooling them. Like they knew all of our tricks. So You have to, and somebody said it, act your wage, right? Don't copy people. You know what I'm saying? Be very, very careful because like Brad said earlier, it's very easy to fall into the trap of spending money that you don't have. But you have to remember that you have to pay it back. Right? It's not free money. They give you the money with interest. It's not free, and the interest is not low either. So you have to think about these things.
And the store cards have very, very high interest rates, and they know that people usually carry balances on them, which is why they push it so hard. So be wary.
One piece of I guess advice or a suggestion for older people, well, not necessarily older people, but if you are the first in your family to come here and you already have already built credits, like you already have a credit card. One of the things that I did, I was the first in my family to come here. One of the things that I did was, as soon as my family members got their social security numbers, I put everybody as an authorized user on my credit card. But I mean, I didn't give them any of them the cards. So in the meantime, I was building credit for them even before they got here. So even for the, as Dwayne was talking about, when you come here at like 25 and you kind of like coming up, with people whose parents already built them credit, that's one of the things you could do if you are one of the first members of your family to already come here and you already have established credit. As soon as your family members get their social security number, or sometimes they don't even need a social security number as yet. For some banks, all you need is like their name. You just add your family member as a authorized user. You don't even need to give them a card. You take the card, you put it in your drawer, and that's that.
Yep.
Someone made a good point in the comments. The date that your credit card cycle ends and you get your statement, it may not necessarily be your payment due date. That's another thing to be aware of before you end up having late payments.
Right.
And then
the date that it reports as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The late payments, right? There's a couple of things, right? I mean, I've done it before where you had maybe one late payment, and you maybe forget to make the payment a day or two late or whatever, or something that you didn't catch. Normally it takes 30 days for them to report that, right? But some banks will give you like they'll forgive that one late payment. So don't hesitate to ask. The worst they could say is no, right? So you call the bank and say, hey, I've been making payments for the last 3 years on time. Like, this is the one time I haven't made a payment, right? And it's happened to me where they'll say, okay, we'll take it out, right? If you have a credit card and you're not using the credit card, if that's the only credit card you have, then it's pointless to have a credit card. I think you should use the credit card, but you have to be disciplined when you use the credit card. It comes like every other thing in life, right? You have to have some kind of discipline when you use it, right? So that's one thing. So now, in terms of I mean, you guys could give your opinion on this, but in terms of getting into the workplace, right? You've got to the point where you've interviewed for a job and you've impressed the people interviewing you and you've been accepted into a job. What are some of the things you guys think are the most important things in terms of getting promoted and being recognized at your job? Because your degree is not necessarily gonna get you promoted, right? There are other things. What do you guys think? How about that?
Well, I think firstly, as especially entry-level person, you need to establish with your direct manager what the criteria is to get promoted. A lot of people sometimes just go through the job and they think, well, if I do a good job, I'll get promoted. That may not necessarily be the case. There may be other factors. You need to kind of establish what exactly do I need to do to get promoted. They might say, well, you have to do 2 years in this role. You have to exceed in certain areas. You have to meet certain metrics or key performance indicators. I think the first thing you need to do is just have a touch with your boss and establish what those criteria are. And then, in addition to that, in terms of promotion, I mean, obviously doing a good job.
Yep.
But one thing from my experience, I can say you should be keen to avoid is over promising and under delivering. You know, it's very easy to fall into the habit of saying, yeah, I'll get that done, I'll do that for you, boss.
Yep.
And then next thing you know, you realize it's not possible, and then you're looking bad from their perspective because you said you would. So
Yep.
you want to be wary of that as well in terms of impressing your
but
manager.
that's my little phrase at work. You know, every time my boss tell me, "Can you do this?" I'll try my best.
Yeah,
I try my best. I tell him, listen, I over deliver and under promise. All right.
Yeah,
that's it. Okay, let's go and say something.
Now, and I guess it depends on the nature of your workplace as well. You know, because I've worked with in a very small company, 10 people, and there was no room for promotion. But then, based on your performance, you get a raise every year. So it's just a matter of putting your best foot forward, making sure you have a very good work ethic, and ensuring that you have a good relationship with the people around you.
Yep.
Because essentially they don't like you. You might not be there very long. It's not a matter of just getting to be liked, but it's important to ensure that your image is protected, right? Because if you do then want to move on to another job, you're going to have to ask that same boss for a recommendation, and then they're going to have to speak on your behalf. Now, if you don't have a good relationship with that person, then probably not going to speak very well of you, So your work ethic, your punctuality.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's very, very important, punctuality. And just ensure it, again, it's just making sure you get what you said you get done. And even if you have to, like I was guilty of it before, working late just to make sure I get something done for the next day, and certain things like that sometimes you have to do, but other than that,
Yeah, I think all those things tie into what you would call your personal branding. You want to make sure that your reputation out there is good. But I mean, at the same time, sometimes it's the case where, you do such a good job that they don't want you to leave that position.
Right.
So that's also something you have to keep in mind,
It's a balancing act.
and that's where networking may come in, where you want to establish relationship with other people in where you might be interested in moving to laterally or upwards. But all these things I guess it all ties into your personal branding.
Yep. I keep getting it's just one question I want to just touch back on there. The information seemed directed to students who will stay. My question earlier was, how will all of that information assist the student who will return home? So in terms of the internships, in terms of the professional clubs and all of these things, those things can only help you, right? I mean, whether you choose to stay here or you choose to go back home, right? If you did an internship with a reputable company here, you put that on your resume, even if you go into Australia, it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, there are certain things that you will be able to have on your resume that, I mean, that's why schools like Harvard and Yale and all these, that's why these schools cost so much money, because people see these things on their resume and they instantly associate it with certain things, right? So if you do if you in science and you do an internship, let's say with Pfizer or Moderna, right? And then right now, those are two big companies with the vaccine, and then you go somewhere in the Caribbean, that's gonna give you a leg up over somebody who didn't have those experiences, right? So whether or not you plan on staying here or you plan on going back home, it's still stuff that you should try to get yourself involved in. I really think that, networking really gets you where you want to go, right? Networking, apart from how intelligent you might be, apart from, all of these things, it comes back again, and we just call it don't make a pull string, but it really is.
I was just about to say that.
It's a fact.
Like, just about to say
right?
that.
You cannot deny not necessarily who you know, but who knows you impact how much money you will make. I think there's a direct correlation. So, for me, getting into a professional environment where you have to prove yourself, right? You get in, you want to prove yourself, but you still have to keep in the back of your mind that what is your plan, right? Because you start doing a good job and you're going to get people who want you, let's say, to work for them. They're going to be calling you, hey, you should put in for this job. You should put in for that job. That might not be necessarily what you want to do, right? You have to be careful, right? Because you might go pushing yourself to do certain jobs or chasing titles, right? But the objective is for you to make money, not necessarily the title. So you might have a low title and making a lot of money, and you might have a high title making nothing. Like Carol said, right? If you work for a smaller company where they cannot, I mean, maybe you have some employees and you have a boss. That's pretty much it. So if you get promoted, that means you have to be the boss. And what is the likelihood of that, right? So the better option might be for you to move to another company, which is a bigger company where you have more ability to grow, right? So if that's one of the things that's important to you, then you have to put yourself in the position to do that, right? I say somebody say, to be honest, how many of you on the panel have actually put the effort into networking a pull string for someone? Well, I can tell you, I'm not in a position to give anybody a job, but I've definitely recommended people for jobs. And I've definitely put people in contact with people I know that can get them jobs. So when you're talking about networking, again, might not necessarily be you. You might speak to somebody who knows somebody else, right? But again, and I think as Black people, we like to get to this thing where we feel like we're scared to vouch for people because we don't know what they're gonna do and this and this and that. I think that's unfair, right? So in certain instances, you're dealing with certain people like, yes, you don't want to co-sign it, but sometimes you have to take a chance because you never know. And that doesn't mean because the person mess up that is going to be reflected on you. And I know that's what a lot of us think, but that's just it. I don't want to be talking too much, but Rajiv, your turn to talk.
On the to the person who was asking how is it relevant to people going back home, like, just remember, experience is experience. And at the end of the day, once you leave school and you're ready to enter the work world, a lot of the time, all the employer cares about is, can you do the work? If you've done anything anywhere else before, if you have shown that you can actually do the work that you went to school for 4 years for, then you already have a foot ahead. So you would already be looking good when you go back to Dominica and you already have, in your skill set that I've actually done this work already. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to hit the ground running. So experience is experience, whether you want to stay here or whether you go it back. Experience is experience. Internship is important. Hands-on is important. Do not underestimate the importance of being in the field and after you've actually been studying the stuff for some time, because everybody has a 4.0 GPA these days. Everybody have the grades these days, but that doesn't translate to, can you do the work? Are you a good worker?
And
all right, go ahead. I just want to make one comment regarding the networking. When we talk about networking, sometimes it doesn't necessarily, like, I would make it a point of duty to go to networking events that they would hold from professional companies, but most of the time I would end up chatting with people is about non-professional stuff. And a lot of the time people will tell you that when they're looking for someone to hire, it's not necessarily someone that knows everything. They know that you went to school, you could do the job. They want to know that they would like working with you. So a lot of times I would have conversations, for example, like I would go to a big banking networking event from a big bank, and I would meet I met a guy from India and would end up talking about cricket and have a good conversation, a good rapport, and then he would tell the recruiter, like, I had a good conversation with that guy. And next thing you know, you meet the recruiter and then pop up in the applications and you get an interview. So it doesn't always have to be, like networking to talk about work. It could be just having a nice conversation and
Yep.
being memorable, and your name might be pulled up from that application. So
yeah, and I forget what I was gonna say initially, but but part of that too is how you present your experience. In terms of what you might write on your resume or how you might express it. Like, you could have construction, but if you say it in a way that makes it seem like, okay, I did this. That reminded me. I did this, and this is how I did it. you know, and being able to speak about what you do, not only intelligently, but confidently, you know. And one thing that we have to, well, one thing that Dwayne reminded me of, you know, was never diminish your accomplishments. No matter how big, no matter how small, no matter how unimportant it might seem to you, you know, if it hasn't made an impact to somebody in some way, it's important.
Yep.
You know, especially in the professional environment. And most companies like to see quantity. They like things to be quantified. You know, so if you say, I did this many projects in this amount of time, you know, then they'll see that you can, you know, you can work and you can function.
Exactly. Yep.
And then I remember Chrissy was asking about the process for international students in getting jobs and timing. If I recall, while you are in school, so the semester before you plan to graduate, you should apply for your OPT, right? Even before that, you should be applying for jobs. So in your senior year,
not to cut you off, sorry, but
yeah,
that OPT point, can you differentiate between the OPT and a work permit? Because I think a lot of people factor in, well, you know, some people don't apply for OPT for one, but I was having a discussion with somebody yesterday about that actually.
Mhm.
I know the work permit, you kind of have to basically tell the government that you have no other choice, you know, and the OPT is kind of quote unquote easier to get. But you know, give us a little bit, yeah, go into that OPT thing a little bit. Give us some information on that.
I'm not too versed on work permits, but as far as I know, your OPT is a work permit.
Yes.
It's called an employment authorization document. Right.
Yes,
so
does it only allow you to do work in that field of study?
Yes, unfortunately it does.
Right.
So in some way, shape or form, the job that you apply for, say you get the job, that job has to relate to your field of study.
What if you don't get a job in your field of study within the time for your OPT? So let's say they grant it to you. I mean, what is it, typically a year?
Yeah, OPT is a year, and then depending on your
so is it a year
study,
from when you start working, or is it a year they just give you a date and say from a date you could work?
From that date, from the date on the card. So essentially, you want to apply about 3 months before you graduate, because it takes about 3 months to process. Right? You want to make sure that you have that application in. You make sure you fill out the application properly, and it costs money to apply. One thing is, if you make a mistake, they don't send back your money.
No American system send back your money if you make a mistake.
Exactly. So you have to ensure that, and the International Students Office, the Career Center, they all have resources that can help you fill out that paperwork. Right. As far as I know, City College has an immigration office that can help you fill out that paperwork, and they will give you pointers. So those are places that you have to look for on campus that have those resources. And then you should really be applying for jobs before, right? So that's where the networking comes in. So if you had an internship before, like the summer before, you reach out to your contacts that you made there and say, okay, I'm about to graduate, or you know, I've applied for this job. And half of the time, like, it depends on again, the relationship that you created, right? Because if you call somebody up and be like, or you send them an email, tell them, hi, I'm looking for this, they might be able to just tell you about a position that hasn't necessarily even been open.
Come on. Yep.
You know, and then they'll be like, okay, send me your resume, I'll pass it on. And then that's a direct connection, right? So the relationships that you create while you're in school, even on your internships and even odd jobs that you do, you know, is very important. So one of the major challenges for international students is actually getting a company who wants to hire internationals. It's very tough because from my personal experience, I had graduated I'll never forget this. I had an interview with Toyota, a phone interview. Went through 2 rounds of interviews, right? And I had the job. I can safely say I had the job, right? The last thing that came up, will you need sponsorship in the future? Because the company would have to file for you. Yes, I do. The person sigh, they're like, unfortunately, we cannot go any further. You know, and that is something that you're going to hear a lot as an international student, regardless of your grades, regardless of your experience. You will get turned down, and it can be very, very disheartening, right? But the one thing that you have to do is keep moving, because if you allow those rejections to get to you, it's going to hinder your progress in the future, right? So, I guess to talk about my personal experience there is that when I graduated, I got turned down countless times, right? And I was working at a small company in Brooklyn, and I had applied online for this energy modeling position. The company is based in Boston. I don't know nobody in Boston. I had a cousin out there, I had a couple of family friends and stuff. They called me. I went up for the interview, and I got the job, essentially right there on the spot. So I had to pick up and move to Boston. Now, that company took a punt because it's a very small company, and I basically had to tell them everything that they had to do as a company hiring an international student. So it's very important to know all of these things.
Know the process, yep.
Know the process, even for the employer, even on the employer side. You know, so it's very difficult to navigate the system if you don't have help or if you don't know.
Yep.
All right. So you have to ask questions. Make sure you talk to the right people. The International Students Office will have a list of companies that hire international students. The Career Center will have a list of companies that hire international students. You know, and so it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's very rewarding.
But it's possible.
You know?
But it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yes,
it's possible.
Yes,
it's possible.
yes.
You know.
So I want to, just before we kind of start closing down the show, I want to talk about something that I think is important, and that is your self-confidence and your ability to sell yourself. The people who make the most money in the world are salesmen. That's what they do. They know how to sell. If you can sell yourself, you can make as much money as you want. Because a lot of people out there willing to buy. You have to just know how to sell yourself, right? Quick little thing, right? You come up here, you live with somebody, you get a job, eventually you can afford to rent an apartment, you save some money, and then you basically get to the point where you go in apartment to apartment to apartment. Now, some people don't want to buy a house, that's fine. But some people don't buy houses because they don't know. Again, all of that stuff comes down to networking. The more people you speak to in different fields, the more you learn. And knowledge is something that nobody could take away from you, no matter what somebody does. They cannot take knowledge away from you, right? In today's day, the amount of money that you spend to rent, you could buy a house. In a lot of instances, maybe not in Queens, New York, but other parts of America, if you live, even New Jersey, you can buy a house, right? Find out the information, speak to different people, right? Because again, I know a lot of people who came here, who went to school and they didn't pay a dime because they got scholarships. They got people who are willing to pay for them to go to school. They got companies who are willing to pay for them to go to school, right? They got companies who are willing to sponsor them to stay here, right? All of these things have happened. And that doesn't mean it cannot happen for you, right? And to Carol's point about not diminishing your work, I think that's very, very important, right? We meet people all the time who they say stuff and you're looking at them like, what is the big deal? But they know they know how to make it sound like they just invented a cure for cancer or for HIV, right? If you're able to convince, I've done interviews where I haven't spoken anything about what I've done professionally. When they talk about leadership, when they talk about initiative, when they talk about adaptability, when they talk about all these things, a lot of my examples have nothing to do with work, right? Because again, when they're asking you the question, you have to, and that's where the interview coaching and the mock interviews and all these things come into place, right? You have to think about all of these things and use all of your life experiences to help you sell yourself. Quick example, I was doing an interview for the job I am in now. The person interviewing me, was two people interviewing me, a Jamaican guy and a white lady. And all I just kept thinking in my head was the interview coach kept telling me, try to find something in common with the person interviewing you. That's all I kept thinking. So I'm trying to like see what I could say to kind of get him to pique his interest. And then he asked me, what was the toughest thing I had to do? And I said, moving to the United States. And I started going into all of these different reasons why it was so hard to move culturally, all of these different things. And I noticed after I did that thing, the guy just started shaking his head. And that's when I started feeling like more confident, because I was like, okay, I hit something where he could relate, you know, because he maybe went through some not maybe not the same, but something similar. So all of the different things we have to think about. Confidence, be willing to sell yourself. Don't sell yourself short, right? And speak to as many people as you can to learn as much as you can. And you're gonna have people around you too, right? I think a lot of us, we think like, oh, we have to find people who work in these big fields. I mean, look at us here. We all work in different industries pretty much, right? Doing different things. Some of us work for the same company, but we do different things. So utilize the people around you, right? Ask the people to do mock interviews. When you have to do your presentations at work, right? You have to think, okay, maybe if I could explain to my friends who know nothing about what I'm talking about, if they could understand it, then anybody could understand it, right? So all these things you have to be willing to do. Don't be scared to put yourself out there and say, well, my friends will laugh me. Yes, they'll laugh you, but it's best your friends laugh you than the executive laugh you.
Right.
Right. That's how I see it.
The executive probably wouldn't laugh you.
Well, you're right.
The executive probably wouldn't laugh you.
Right. You might not get a second chance.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. But yeah, mock interviews help a lot.
Sure.
It helped me get my current job. So the same guys that are on the screen with me now, you know, sat down with me, did interviews, and helped me out. So it's I can attest to that, you know, first-hand experience that these things do work.
There's good resources online as well. Some of them like Glassdoor and even stuff like Reddit. You could go to a subreddit and find all the interview questions that they ask on these interviews, because it's not new questions, it's repetitive. Mm-hmm. People have been there before, you know, so that helps.
And something we failed to mention, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
Well.
LinkedIn is not Facebook, people?
Yeah. So no pictures of your profile picture should be a professional picture, not necessarily
of your drunk nights.
Keep those away from LinkedIn.
Or your fancy quotes.
That too, or your pets. You know, it's so you really it really is, that in itself is about selling yourself. You know, it's what you put out there for people to see. Volunteer experience is also key. Like if you can just you volunteer at a soup kitchen or something of that sort, you know, that shows that you are not only about the work, but you're about the environment, the community, where you are.
And you can manage your time.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, and then if you members of groups, you know, if you start groups, being founding members of something that actually shows some kind of longevity, that actually helps, you know, because it shows that you can show initiative, and you can again, time management, and then, you know, you have things outside of work that help and it makes you human, Nobody wants to hire a machine.
Yep.
Nobody wants to hire a machine. So
Right.
I mean, very, very good points, guys. I mean, in general, I see, Rajiv, if you guys have to inspect asbestos in all your place, check Rajiv. You'll come and check all yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, I think again, confidence, practice. I don't know if any of you guys have read this book by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about, the best people have done like 10,000 hours. I think I forgot the name of the book, but it's a very popular book where he talks about the celebrities or the sports people that you see, and people think that they just get up and just start doing stuff. Nah, it's a lot of practice, it's a lot of failure.
a lot of work.
You hear the people that are rich, say how many businesses they tried and it didn't work, and they just kept trying until they found something that worked. Right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Sometimes your elevator speech, right? They used to always tell us that in college, your elevator speech, because you might only have a minute to talk to somebody to leave an impression on them, so you have to try to grab those opportunities whenever you get them, not putting too much pressure on yourself. Sometimes when you don't know certain things, it's better for you. You might not know who you're talking to, so you just talk normal.
Yep.
But the moment you find out they're the president of the company, you start panicking, like, oh man, what do I do? What do I see?
Yeah.
So some of these things, we have to think about. All right. So with that said, I don't know if Rajiv, each of us can give all the closing remarks, and then we can close it out.
Yeah, I want to add one thing onto the whole networking conversation that we had about, as we spoke about LinkedIn. One thing I think we kind of forgot, the importance of, or taking advantage of doing stuff like adding little certifications or little courses. We're in the age of the internet right now, and you can get free courses or cheap courses online almost anywhere in anything. So even if you approaching like your senior year or whatnot, you could, in your downtime, do a skill like learn to code or pick up a certification relevant to your major, something like that. Those can help set you apart from others and can probably be the deciding factor with an employer, where they're going to say, you know what, yes, we have to go through this to get him because he's international, but look at this, he can do this, he can do this, he can do that. So little things like adding little certifications or adding little professional skills that are relevant and useful today. Take advantage of YouTube, add on those things, put that on your resume.
YouTube University, boy.
Yeah, I just want to say also in closing, I know we're coming from a culture back home where people tend to stay in jobs for 30, 40 years and retire. America is a little more dynamic where, you could really go places if you really work the market. You could work in a job for a certain number of years, learn what you need to learn, get the title and move. Sometimes I work for a large company for complex organizational structure. Where you have a certain title, you could move to a smaller company and make more money and even gain more experience. So, always consider your options in terms of career progression. It doesn't always have to be a move up. It could be a lateral move that may benefit you in the future.
And getting experience in different fields. It may not be something that you're very passionate about, but if you can gain experience from anything and then apply it in your role, or that those things also help. I guess just my final thought is just to keep working on yourself. Certifications, as I just say, keep your resume fresh, keep your resume up to date, and never stagnate. Never get too comfortable to the point where you're just like, all right, what do I do next? I really want to, it becomes, I don't even know, I don't really know what to say. It just keep moving forward. A rolling stone gathers no moss. That's the best phrase I can use.
Yep.
Yeah,
man. So my final words, I kind of give a lot of my final words already, but it's more of like just think positive. I think positive thinking goes a long way.
Yep.
You know, because life is hard, right? We go for a lot of ups and downs, and it's easy to kind of fall into the trap of, well, woe is me and things are bad and all this stuff. But you know, I mean, as I've noticed in my own life, nothing lasts forever. Whether it's good or bad, it's never gonna last forever. So you have to always keep that in the back of your mind. And considering what everybody else has said, try to just learn something new every day. Whether it be at your job, outside of your job, learn something new every day, because you never know where it's going to come in handy, where and when it's going to come in handy. Like, it's crazy, right? It's like stupid. I don't say stupid, but fun facts or little things that you learn could help you in like a networking conversation, right? Because you might not be a big football person, but you might be maybe somebody in your job from London, and you say, oh, I'm a Manchester United fan, or I'm this fan, I'm Chelsea fan, and that just opens up a whole set of conversation. I mean, Carol
might rub them the wrong way too.
Well, yes, but hey, I think there's a lot more.
It's a talking point, right? Yeah,
I mean,
a talking point.
I have a mask with a Manchester United logo on there, right? And this guy from this guy from one of the big electrical companies, right? He came to the job, and we speak to him on what do you call it, on Teams all the time, but I never met him in person. So as soon as I walked up to him, he saw the United thing, and he said, "Oh, thanks for Lukaku." He's telling me, he supports Inter Milan. He's from Milan. So we stand there speaking for 15-20 minutes just about football, right? And now he's more comfortable with me, and that's a relationship now that I've built, right? So again, all of these things we're saying is just for that, we can all help each other, and don't be scared to put yourself out there. Don't be scared to fail. Yeah. Do not be scared to fail, because the only way you get to grow is if you make yourself uncomfortable. That's the only way. That's the only way.
Vulnerability is the seed.
Yep.
You have to make yourself uncomfortable.
Yep. That's the only reason I still have big stomach. I'm not willing to make myself uncomfortable and work out. But but yeah, so with that said, guys, man, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Talk the Ting. Sure. We really want to concentrate on positivity. We really want people, when they tune in, to learn something. Whether or not we have the answers, we could find the answers. Like I said, you guys can reach out to us on Instagram. You guys can reach out to us on Facebook. If there's any particular topics you guys think that you want us to cover, maybe we could work on getting somebody to come on to talk about it. All of these things. This show is not necessarily for us, it's for you guys. And we want to make sure that you guys are getting something out of it if you're giving us an hour and a half of your time every other Wednesday. All right. So with that said, we're gonna have another episode next week. Next week, we're gonna have one of the co-founders of Viva La Carnival, Dion Sentile. He's gonna be on with us next week. At the same time, same place. All right. All the carnival lovers, tune in. We'll be talking about a lot of different things, what it takes to get into, what it takes into developing a show. Some of the things that we might not know as patrons of these shows, right? Very, very, a lot of information we could try to get from him and speak to him about his own experiences with that kind of stuff. All right. So we'll be posting the link for the merch in the chat. We'll be posting it on our Facebook page as well. As you guys can see, we have our merch on. Brad Oda, he's only don't come yet. Oh, by the way, everybody asking me why it's taking so long. It's custom thing all the other, so you have to take a little time, so but it will come, and when it come in quality. All right, guys. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.
Thanks.
Yes, I.